based on the funding source, the project type. So different funding sources might require different application materials or different steps. We saw a variety of technologies used to submit application materials, whether that's sort of in-house built application portals, web forms, Procorum document upload, or non-ProLink file sharing like Dropbox or ShareFile. We also saw quite a bit of variation in how these applications integrate with a ProLinkHFA. We found that some agencies create DevTC deals in ProLinkHFA pretty early in the application process, even though there's probably there's at least a chance that that project might not go all the way through to receive funding, and other agencies wait until there's more clarity around that application before proceeding. Just some other quick ones. We saw kind of variance in how granular the RFPs might be for funding, where some states just had kind of more general RFPs for maybe like 4% or 9% LIHTC, where other states had like very specific programs for allocating that funding. We saw quite a bit of variation in how deadlines are managed, the use of rolling applications, states having either one or multiple rounds per year, states having like hard deadlines versus soft deadlines, whether or not there's a cure period to amend your application based on review, and then the opportunity to be put on a wait list or roll over to another year. We also found some variation in how hands-on an agency might be in collaborating with an applicant. Some agencies prefer a more hands-off approach, maybe to minimize the chances for favoritism or affecting the applications, where other states have a more hands-on approach where they're in more frequent communication with the applicants and kind of assisting them with their application as they proceed. We definitely saw that every agency does some amount of public data reporting, but then the way that agencies get that data varied quite a bit, whether it came from ProLink data or from their own data source. There's quite a bit of variability there. And then finally, the last two, just about visibility. We found that some agencies kind of provided more visibility into the status of an application as it was being reviewed. And then other agencies kind of intentionally try not to give too many updates on the status of an application until it reaches a decision. One use case we heard was just sort of managing communication load, that when applicants see that their application is currently being reviewed, they get all excited to contact you and try and assist with your review potentially. And then the final thing is just in how the final application package is submitted. We saw all sorts of things here again: electronic file sharing, email, hard copies, USB drives, just about everything. Some of the common friction sources that we saw was kind of verifying an application's materials was almost universally a manual process. This generally involved cross-referencing a application guide with the documents that were actually submitted, possibly in Procorum if they're using that. We found that application processes generally have minor, infrequent changes, but when they do change, that usually requires some collaboration between an underwriting team and an IT team. We found that every agency does some amount of identification and verification of project entities, but just verifying that the companies and the people involved with the project are who they say they are. We found that in general, kind of extracting application data for reporting or for kind of migration into ProLinkHFA involves either some or a lot of manual work, or has kind of additional technical overhead of managing API services to do that. We definitely found that there was some difficulty in managing Procorum work centers, especially around access. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And we found that applications primarily rely on templated document submission. I'm going to pause there real quick. Does anyone have any other thoughts around sources of friction in managing your application process? Anything that's really been weighing on you?
Raise your hand again if you're from the development team or the group. That would be okay. Thanks for the reminder.
All right, no.
A lot of states think this.
Well, this is brand new with Pennsylvania. So previous to this, it's usually facilitated through Procorum. Is the applications are submitted through Procorum. So this is an upgrade. This is like the TurboTax experience for developers submitting applications, which we're really excited about. But this is totally different from that. Yeah, it's an app. It'll be an app, kind of like tenant portal. That's a new feature. Yeah. Yep.
Without going into complete detail, because I was curious about how do the states get their applications in using with Procore?
So yeah, right now it's they use Smart Docs. We probably have some people who could share some examples. And so Laura right here from Idaho, she's waving her hand. You got, if you want to hear more about that current process. Yeah.
So just a quick sort of background on Procorum. I think most of you are probably familiar with it, but it's really Procorum's kind of an open-ended collaboration environment. It provides mostly unstructured functionality for file sharing and collaboration. So it's like original design intent didn't really attempt to address these more specific use cases where you might want to provide more structure to that collaboration. You can't really define submission requirements in Procorum itself. A Procorum Work Center is kind of just an open-ended space for files to be uploaded, but it doesn't really support sort of setting requirements on what is uploaded in that Work Center itself. Another kind of note about Procorum is that when an external collaborator needs to make changes to their profile or their Work Center access, they have to contact the account owner to do that for them. There's really not any self-service functionality for guest users within Procorum. And then the other thing that it's kind of missing for this use case is the ability to manage deadlines or locking work centers. I think we hear that generally the way that's implemented is to actually remove the accounts from the work center if you don't want them to have access anymore. And obviously that's not the best. It's something we can improve on for sure. And then the final note is that work centers are really meant to be kind of every user that has access to a work center is essentially on an equal plane as far as visibility goes. So any work center activity, if you're at the agency and you're downloading files to review them, the guest users who uploaded those files are able to see the activity as it's happening. So they can tell like, oh, they just downloaded my file. I should give them a call to try and talk through it. There's really no way to kind of segment that visibility within a work center. All right, so now let's talk about some of our project design objectives and how we're hoping to address some of these friction sources. So like with all the information that we gathered, we kind of compiled a list of primary design objectives to ensure that What we built here is actually addressing sources of friction and is sufficiently flexible to support a wide variety of use cases. And I have the high level ones here, but we're going to go into each one a little bit more in depth. So the first design objective is to provide the ability to manage application file upload requirements and track an applicant's progress in fulfilling said requirements. This is kind of the big piece of the puzzle of just being able to set requirements and structure within that document intake. This could include the ability to create and manage multiple application processes for different funding opportunities or use cases. We want to improve both the applicant and reviewer user experience by providing structure to the Procorum file upload process. We want to minimize the opportunity for mistakes and missing documents. And we also want to reduce the need for kind of manual labor in verifying submissions as they come in. Next design objective is to reduce the overhead of manual administrative tasks in Procorum. So this could include providing the ability to automate work center creation and administration, providing some level of self-service user management for applicants or guest accounts, and then improve functionality for managing deadlines, application or work center locking, and visibility. Next design objective is to provide functionality to facilitate application review and Procorum navigation. So this would include providing the ability to monitor application progress, being able to control how an applicant progresses through an application, and providing the ability to complete bulk actions on multiple applications at one time. Next one is support the presentation, analysis, and portability of application pipeline data. So this could include some dashboards that are maybe configurable or have some filtering options, having robust functionality around data and file export, and then also having data views for these applications within Procorum. Next one's a big one, and we'll talk about this graphic a little bit more later, but maximizing flexibility while maintaining a consistent experience for applicants. This is a tough one, but it's probably the most interesting one to try and tackle. We want to be able to support a wide variety of use cases by providing sort of pretty flexible configuration for how to set up these application processes, but we don't want it to be so configurable that it becomes a job in and of itself to set up these applications. We got to find that sort of balance between the two. We also want to provide flexibility to facilitate the application process from start to finish, or be able to use this functionality for maybe just a portion of your overall application process, depending on how you would like to use it.
So like a portion meaning like pre-application or like a pre-approval, or
right. You might be able to, if we'll show an example of this, but perhaps you want to, for at least initially or maybe forever, use this to administer your pre-application, and then you could have some configuration where work centers would be automatically created with a certain work center template, and then once they complete their pre-app, the work centers would be used for the full application at that time. And there would be a link between those two. Okay, next design objective is to provide integrations and automations with ProLinkHFA. We want to be able to provide automated dev or TC deal creation in ProLinkHFA using data that's acquired through the application process. We want to have some relation between ProLinkHFA deals and the applications and work centers that are connected to them. We want to reduce the need for manual data entry, creating custom integrations or doing repetitive processes. And we want to create a foundation for future expansion of these integrations. Last one is lay the groundwork for the future Procorum. So you'll kind of notice in these screenshots, you'll see it more in the demo. There's a kind of UI refresh tied to this change as well. As part of that refresh, we're really kind of renewing our focus on usability and navigation, making Procorum a product where it's easier to get to the work that's most relevant to you from your homepage. We also want to sort of promote the role of applicants and developers within Procorum. Right now, they kind of just exist as guests within the agency account, but we want to kind of give them more of that full Procorum experience as well. And then finally, provide building blocks for future enhancements to document intake, collaboration, and integrations. So possibly expanding this functionality to other use cases. So just quickly going through how we have kind of imagined that this might work. You would have a parent sort of object for an application process would be a funding opportunity. That funding opportunity could have one or more stages. Each stage would have its own unique deadlines, submission requirements, and review procedures, and progression. And then a stage could be made up of multiple sections. And each stage section would have kind of its own data that it's intaking, or its own data type. So you might have this green stage here has a couple of form sections that they would fill out, and then the third section would be document submission. This next stage, maybe it's just one form and one document submission. So you'd have some granularity in how these stages are set up, but an applicant would be submitting an entire stage at one time, and the deadline would be tied to the stage itself. This is that graphic that we saw earlier, but this kind of shows the green flow chart at the top is just a more simple scenario where it's a very linear progression from stage to stage. When an applicant starts that application, stage one would be unlocked by default. That would be the very first step they would complete. Stage two could be configured to unlock after stage one receives approval. And then stage three could be configured to unlock at a specific time. Go ahead.
Is the intention that those stages, like the naming of those, would be configurable?
Yes.
For my
Definitely.
agency?
Yes. There'll be quite a bit of configuration around it. And then the blue flowchart just kind of shows a parallel stage scenario. So an applicant could complete stage one, and then they might be able to complete stage 2 and 3 in parallel. Oh, go ahead.
Really quick question.
Yeah.
Is it possible to have, like a stage 2 or 3, have the deadline set, like X amount of days past a certain?
Well, anything is possible so far because we haven't built it yet, but that was actually something I was just thinking about the other day. As a potential feature that we might need. So yeah, some like relative time option. Yeah, definitely. So the blue one just shows being able to complete stages in parallel, and then maybe stage 4 only unlocks after both stage 2 and 3 are approved. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick screen configuration here to start the demo. Bear with me.
It's what you're going to be demonstrating is like prototypes for us, right? Not.
Yes.
This isn't real.
It's not real yet.
Is this when we ask a lot of questions?
Yes. Actually, before we do that, I have one more slide. So yeah, here's some of the caveats. This is like a prototype. It's a work in progress. We're really focused on high level concepts here more than sort of specifics of fields and naming and colors and UI, although we are working on that as well. We want your feedback, whether that's on sort of higher level design objectives, ability to support your use case, opportunities for additional functionality that you might find useful, the overall UI look and feel, how feedback on how this product might kind of work for you, improve your application workflow, and finally any inefficiencies or opportunities you see that this current design might fail to address.
That's a quick question.
Yeah.
Will an agency have an ability to have different types of application processes?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
I'll show you that as well. Okay, now we do my. All right, cool. I did. Yeah, go ahead.
Earlier you said you were gonna change how Perforum functioned or whatever. Like you were gonna change the, oh, I have to talk about it, okay. You can change how the interface was for Perforum, like what you landed on and stuff like that. I mean, we use it for other things other than this. So is that gonna be like like right now you say, I'm gonna land on Budget Pro, or I'm gonna land on Tenant Portal. Would it be like that? Would we land on this?
Yeah, this is more for the first page that you come to. Like right now, it's the activity feed.
Right?
That'll change a little bit to help with some navigation. But when you go into Work Center, that'll still function the same.
So when I first land, it'll look like a developer world, or it'll look
No,
more
there'll just
generic?
be different. There'll be a little bit more information about the different things that you can do in Procorum.
Okay.
You'll still see your activity feed as a tab and other things. So we're still kind of playing around with what that could look like.
You're gonna correct me. So excited.
All right, so you can see here we're currently on the PHFA website. And right now they have this link set up that takes an applicant to their in-house intent to submit portal. But our vision here is that once you configure a funding opportunity in our application, you would be able to get a external link specific to your funding opportunities that you could then post on your website. So we'll click this link here. In this example, the applicant doesn't have an account yet within Procorum. So we'll run through the account setup. At this stage, we'll be collecting some information about the applicant's company. And then this information would be attached with the application itself. So it'd also be stuff that is visible to you. They might be able to select some things like their primary business activities, their current states of interest, where they work, all the normal stuff that you would expect, like an address. And then at the same time, they would create their user profile. So this is all self-service. They don't have to request a Procorum account from you. They're able to set up their own. And this account would be sort of, it's separate from your account in Procorum. They're not getting access to your account with this stuff.
Can we still invite them? But they're not.
Yeah, you'll still be able to, it'll still function similarly. You'll be able to invite them to work centers that you may have. They'll just, now there's going to be some kind of organization around all those guest accounts, which right now don't really have a parent company that they're associated with. We'll click through the email verification. On this page, you'll see this funding opportunities marketplace, which is a new item in the left sidebar. A couple things to note on this page: the applicant will be able to do some filtering. We want them to be able to view funding opportunities potentially across multiple agencies, so they could see PHFA and CHFA here at the same time. You'd have the ability to publish funding opportunities that are upcoming, so the applicant could go in and see that this 2026 9% LIHTC is upcoming and it opens on January 5th. But because they clicked through from the Pennsylvania website, when they first got to this page, it was pre-filtered to only show the Pennsylvania funding opportunities. Couple other things to note, a lot of this will be configurable by the agency, so setting the title of the funding opportunity, you'll be able to configure the description that shows up here in the card, configure the open date, close date, which will drive whether or not the apply now button is available for them to initiate an application, and then potentially having some ability to provide an additional resources link or learn more, where if the applicant clicks that, it would take them back to your website to review documentation. Good.
I'll talk about it. Is this the page that I'm an outside person, I've logged in, this is my page, not the HFA's page?
Right, yeah, this is the
Okay,
applicant.
so I've logged in and
perspective
instead of
to
just
start.
going straight to activity, I can get into this and see things related to me. And because I'm a member of both Pennsylvania and CHAPA, I should be able to see both those groups.
Well, right now, they aren't a member of Pennsylvania yet, they just have their own profile, but once they start an application, they'll become a guest user.
So it's gonna show every state that has ProLinkHFA in.
Right.
Okay, will that be confusing to people who only have one state?
Well, if they navigate from the state, it would be pre-filtered to show whatever state they came from. So that if they came from the Pennsylvania website, it would only show Pennsylvania funding opportunities. We could also potentially have some functionality for setting default filters, so that if you don't do business in other states, you can just kind of hide those or have that filter save.
Right, because I'm logging in as Stacy from forum.com. I'm not coming from the HFA website, so would it remember that I originally came from the HFA website?
That's a good note. We should definitely consider having some memory around those filters, I think. I don't think we've necessarily thought through exactly how those filters would work, but that's a good
So
point.
Virginia will always be at the bottom of the list. That's why
True. Then you have to do like A_Virginia.
Well, I'm sorry, Wisconsin.
Like PHFA website. Maybe, this is a maybe, maybe I want only my agency's information available. Maybe I don't want the developer to go select some other agency, so that might be something to consider.
Yeah, good feedback.
What language is that last?
That's just Latin. Yeah.
Just-
Yeah. Don't try to read that one. I can't read it either. I don't think it says anything real. I don't know. I didn't vet it. All right, so we're gonna jump into now, as an applicant, let's say I want to start this 9% application. I'll start off by entering my project name. You can see that this application is associated with my developer account here. And then we'll jump into this page. Let me just update.
That must be.
Oh,
You
go ahead.
created an application and it knew you were part of the green whatever.
Yep.
Is it now available to anybody who's part of the green whatever? So Stacy started it, but maybe Becky is also part of that group, but she can see the same thing?
Not quite. But they will have the ability to configure who gets access to this application. But just starting it, no one gets it by default except for the person who started it.
Even though it knows what company she works for.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so a few things to note on this screen. This would be where they would drop in when they started an application. There's a couple of sidebar items here. We got the application overview, which we're on. There's a collaborators item, which is where they can manage who has access to work on this application. And then there's a work centers item where they would be able to access sort of the more traditional Procorum work centers that might be associated with this application. So other things we want to add, this page is kind of the hub of information about their application. So having, being able to have some call outs. This one in particular is just letting them know that they haven't added any collaborators yet. We'd have the application stages section here, which gives an overview of the different steps that might be in your application process, show deadlines and warnings about impending deadlines. And then finally, possibly having some ability to maintain internal notes about the application. We'll take a quick look at the collaborators page. So this is where, as the applicant, I can manage who at my agency or who at my company has access to this application. You could go into add collaborator and you could either invite a new user to your account or use an existing user that's already in your account. So they could use this drop down to select another user at this point.
How do they decide what rights those people? Or are they all just gonna get generic external user rights?
We haven't necessarily put together mocks for how that might be configured. Right now, we just kind of have the concept of they will be able to add a collaborator of some time, whether or not there's more granularity around specific abilities with that. We haven't necessarily decided on yet.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good question is, would you want different privileges? Would you want to allow them to be able to set up things that they can do by different users at that developer company?
Yes, and we would love this functionality to extend to the other groups of Procorum.
Right.
Budget Pro, Tenant Portal, and those ones have to be more secure because of the access they have.
Right.
I'm not sure. I mean, if the master account should be able to pick, Eric, I'm talking about your group. So the master, whoever the master person is, should be able to pick who underneath them and what rights they have.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, so basically we're thinking that, we would create that shell Procorum account. And I think this example is like green developers. And then there may be some kind of authorization process. We haven't totally fleshed that out yet, but you'd be able to maybe assign a company admin. So, John Smith or somebody is the company admin, then they could potentially add and remove people from their company. And then that are people that could be used in this application process as well.
and will be some kind of reporting to the HFA that this action has happened.
Yeah, so we'll need to determine like what level of insight you want on that. Is it, just being notified, or do you want to approve people being added to these different types of functions like an application?
Are they gonna be able to add somebody that's not from their company? So I'm thinking of a developer and a consultant. So you have a whole nother company with a whole nother group of people, and they're both working on this application simultaneously.
Yeah, that's definitely a use case that we heard a lot of is consultants being involved in these application processes. So we're not sure if the consultant will have their own like shell company Procorum account, or if the developer will just add them as a user on that application. But we definitely want to support that, make sure that they can submit
Yeah,
on
'cause
their
in
behalf.
Pennsylvania, it's gonna be a big thing.
Yeah,
And they work across multiple developers all the time, so maybe they should have their own account.
Yeah. yeah.
And BK, if I added a consultant to this application, can they only see and access this application, or can they see everything in the work center, or do we know like that level of granularity yet?
Yeah, they'll only be able to see this application that they're associated with. And then if they're doing business with another developer, they might see another application that they're also helping work on.
But not the entire application under this account.
Correct.
Right,
Just,
yeah.
this will be very specific, just the one that they're involved with.
Just that, so that like, as the application moves forward into the full work center and there's more going on, maybe that consultant doesn't have access to that work center anymore, or.
That'll be configurable too, that like there may be one or more work centers that's associated with this particular application, and maybe the consultant's part of one of those work centers and not part of another. So we can really configure that.
Yeah, we definitely have some more to think about. I think with this, we did kind of just as a concept, having the idea of if you're inviting a new collaborator, being able to add them as a guest. That's really just sort of here for the purpose of demonstration. But I think we definitely have to keep thinking about how those use cases would be handled. So we just added a new collaborator to this application named Bob Jones, and you can see that he has a pending invite. We're going to go back now to the application overview and start the intake stage. You can see that there's currently 2 stages unlocked for me to work on. The intake stage has 4 sections here in the sidebar. This first section would be a form that you could choose to enable within your process for property or project details. This page, we're still kind of finalizing what fields and options would be available within this form, what level of configurability there would be for it. But really, this form would drive some of the integration with ProLinkHFA. So a lot of the data that's taken here would be used to then create the dev or TC deals in ProLinkHFA. So once they kind of fill out this section, the applicant will be able to save their stage in progress, or they can progress to the next section. Here they would indicate their project team. Again, this would be configurable by the agency as far as what roles you want to require. Go ahead.
I do have a question about the property.
Mhm.
Could you, if they already have, if this is like a rehabilitation or preservation deal, could they say this is my, if they have their HFA number, could they like say this is my HFA number and we can
I'm back together.
tie back together right away? So that's our biggest complaint right now that we get from our poor portfolio staff. How do we fix it?
Yeah, so we could potentially do a lookup into HFA, and if they know their number, that could repopulate some of this data. So,
And
Yeah.
ultimately can
and then connect it all.
Get the association that they exist already and they're
Right.
re-indicating versus, or they're requesting a re-indication because we're in the application process.
Right.
But if it fails, then we do that, we have to manually go in and connect them all.
That's a good idea.
Great point. Thank you for that.
And for these project teams, are there like different branches within these four categories? For example, like the managing agent, I see you can add the company name and primary contact, but what about like addresses and that type of stuff? Is it?
Yeah, we just kind of have like a simplistic, I guess you could say, implementation within the mocks. I think we probably have to evaluate what fields we would collect here. If maybe we should be collecting more detail like address and stuff like that. But kind of within this prototype, we just have company name, primary contact information at this time.
We indicate which project team members we want to add because we track architect, we track general contractor, a lot more information than just these.
Yeah, and I'll show you that from the agency perspective. Assuming we don't run out
But
of
yeah,
time.
you'd be able to configure all of your
Yeah.
project team members that you require, and that's per funding opportunity application setup. So you might have different ones for one app versus another.
Okay, so I'm gonna kind of skip ahead a little to supporting documents. So then this would be kind of the meat of the stage where they're actually uploading documents to fulfill the application requirements. Some things to note on this page. Stuff in this column here under file description would be largely configurable. So you'd be able to set the title of a document, provide a descriptive text, potentially provide a template file for them to download, fill out like a fillable PDF or Excel document. And then as an applicant, you could then on the right column upload the files to fulfill these requirements. And you would have be able to have a mix of required documents, which would be indicated with this asterisk here, and they're in the required documents section. But then you may also be able to support sort of optional or additional documentation. Good.
I know. What the opportunities that I'm gonna have as another agency to give input to this, like, are we gonna have more meetings like this? Am I gonna give a preview doc? Are you gonna call me and interview me? Like, what are my opportunities to give feedback?
All the above.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we've had one meeting with most of the agencies so far. So we started to put together this mock-up here. And so, yeah, we'll be reaching out and scheduling additional meetings, and eventually there'll be a full preview doc and we'll describe everything that we're doing, and you'll be able to review that and make sure it makes sense.
So
I assume we have to like program all of these things. So on our side, we, like we do a different round every year and we have sometimes different requirements, but can we copy this?
Oh, yes. You'll be able to copy all this. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
every time.
Nice.
Yeah, that'd be good.
I mean,
And I'm assuming it's not just PDFs. I can do Excel, Words, whatever.
Yeah.
they're good.
For applications that may have applied previously but didn't get awarded, will their application stay in system to resubmit for future funding?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something we've talked about a little bit. The application will definitely still be available in the system. It'll never like disappear unless you explicitly want to delete it. But as far as kind of tying previous applications to maybe like a new attempt at receiving funding, it's something we've started to discuss, but I don't think we have kind of a final answer on what that would look like yet.
Is that a common use case that you'll see?
Yes. That they've already submitted, but then they're just trying to fill the gap. So
Okay, so more for gap funding versus resubmitting a failed previous attempt. Yeah,
it goes both ways.
okay.
So
Yeah, we have considered maybe doing some kind of copy of an application to a new application. Let's see, that's possible.
That like the same time.
Okay.
Like, okay, this was done and it's over, and then we're reapplying for that. Can kind of give us an idea of the pipeline.
Yeah, even if you didn't copy, they'd be able to download what they've saved in this one and then re-upload it in the new one, right? If they have a form that they have to fill out.
Yeah, it'd all be available.
Let's see, I had a hand over here.
Yeah. Is it possible to replace the upload file component with link to specific web form or AI chatbot to walk through Q&A or even pull up previous submissions and actively do that?
I think that's a great suggestion. We had talked very briefly at one point a little bit about supporting sort of external aspects of the application process, but I don't think we have necessarily have a final answer on what else might be available there. But I definitely think that's a good suggestion of being able to, provide other sort of data intake types, like linking to an external form or doing, there's some other aspect of the application.
Yeah, the challenge with using the file as the concept is it's just a data point that gets stored into a database somewhere and it's prone to XML errors or other similar. Yeah, too many characters in this section, not enough in that, or
Right.
whatever.
I think that would be good.
I am.
All right. So then moving on to the last page, review and submit. This is where the applicant can review all the information they've entered for this stage. They just have some validation to make sure they didn't mess anything up. If everything's all good, they have a bunch of green check marks here saying they did everything well. They could then submit the intake. This would be another sort of opportunity for configuration on your side. We want to be able to provide you with the ability to add some sort of message to the applicant when they complete a stage. So you'd be able to configure what text appears in this modal here, kind of giving further instruction for how they proceed at this time. Go back to the application overview, and then you can kind of see that the stage is completed and that they're ready to move on to this next stage here. What's my deadline for time? I'm close, so.
Yeah, 15 minutes.
Okay.
Would that intake part, so once they submit, would that need to be approved before they can go through these other stages?
That'll be pretty configurable, so you'll be able to say maybe you want a particular stage to not really require a review process. They can just move on as soon as they submit. Maybe you do want an approval process or review, so you as an agency can kind of gate that progression until it's approved, and then they can move on to the next stage. We definitely want to provide quite a bit of configuration on how they kind of proceed from one stage to the next. So it'll really be up to you how you want it to work.
Once you submit, does it go then to ProLinkHFA, or is this going to like a pro forma account for our staff to look at?
We're still kind of talking a little bit about how that'll work. I think we want to be able to provide some configuration around, you can decide when that ProLinkHFA deal gets created. So maybe if you're kind of in the case where you like to wait until it's pretty close to finalized or sure thing, you could select a stage later in the process to do that. Or if you want it in ProLinkHFA pretty early, like right when you receive your intent to submit, you could select an earlier stage and have that automation happen at that time.
But it'll probably be a manual trigger. So there's some admin review screens that we'll take a look at, and we'll probably want to make it so that you can like select multiple applications and say, okay, push all these over to HFA. You have to let us know if you would want that to be automated. I think most people probably would want to kind of review that list before it actually gets copied into HFA.
Especially if they can get to it from the website, because you can get all kinds of people in there.
Right.
So I use like single family as well as development, so if I was to use this for like a single family pipeline or down payment closing cost assistance, would I then be able to choose like where to send it on that stage, depending on the application type?
Gotcha. Are you using like a single family dev module for your home down payment assistance type stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to consider that. Like we want this funding opportunity to be available for multifamily or single family.
Yeah, I
So,
think it's different
yeah.
models.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump over into more of the agency viewpoint. So now we're looking at screens that you would kind of interact with in your day-to-day. So the first thing to kind of note here is this is sort of a concept for how we might imagine that the kind of landing page might be updated. Our goals are, again, to make it easier to navigate, easier to jump into your account or specific work centers that are relevant to you, and kind of communicate the structure of Procorum a little bit better to kind of clear up any possible ambiguity about sort of relationships between accounts and work centers. But as a Pennsylvania user, I would jump into my account here. You'll notice a couple new things in the sidebar. There's this, much like we added properties for the inspect app, there would be a new sidebar item for applications, as well as a sidebar item. Oh, it's not showing up.
Question.
Yep, go ahead.
I don't handle applications, so this may be a naive question, but where it says so-and-so has submitted an application, and I realize that a lot of these companies have entities that are multifold. We do not want to have what company they're affiliated with on that list to see who made the application rather than just a name. Might be a name you're not familiar with, you would know what.
Oh, I
company
see.
they're with.
So we know Stacy works for Green, whatever.
Right.
But here it just says Stacy, so I don't know who Stacy is. I don't know that that's filing the app from Green, whatever.
I see. Yeah, that's a good point. It's probably more relevant who the developer, the applicant is than the person.
Or more relevant, the name of the application, like an application
Oh,
has
yeah.
been submitted for Green Acres,
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's-
you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Not the person or the developer, because the developer could submit 5 applications in a round.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Agreed.
Good feedback. So from the screen, you'll be able to jump into either application review or overview. I'll just take a quick look at the review application screen. From here, you kind of have a master list of all the applications that you've received. There'd be quite a bit of functionality for filtering or configuring this page, being able to filter to specific funding opportunities, being able to filter to a specific stage that they've submitted or completed, being able to filter by the current status, like maybe just seeing applications that are currently pending review. And we've talked a little bit about possibly providing functionality. This might be like sort of a future initiative, but providing functionality for assigning reviews to specific users, or assigning tasks for the review process. So being able to filter to like just my work could be an option.
That would be like the members of the account.
Right, that would be your actual agency employees or members of the account. If you jump into a specific application, you'd see a screen that's pretty similar to what the applicant would see. On the overview, you would be able to get a high-level view of their progress through the application. There could be some call-outs for tasks that need to be completed. You could also jump into a specific stage that needs review. So you could jump into intake. You'd see all the information that is submitted in this stage. We'd want to have some pretty robust ability to export this data. So we kind of have a little mock here set up where you can select which data you want to export. You could possibly select a file format for that form data, and then also choose to include all the supporting documents. And that might export it in a zip file or as a download, but then you can move it into, if you have another file system, you can move it into that if you'd like.
Will it come from HFA? Not HFA, we can go to Perform and grab them. Be able to do that still?
Yeah, so you'd be able to push files either from the application into the work center and then from the work center into HFA. We might also have the ability to just push it directly. Like when you do the push of the application to a deal, it could be at that point, all the files that are attached here also get attached to that deal in HFA.
Yeah, so it could be something where like you could select a destination here and say like I want to export to HFA or I want to export to a traditional Procore Work Center, or I want to export to my desktop or whatever.
Do you have customizable alerts and notifications baked into the process there? So when tape gets assigned, the applicant gets an email or notification, is that there already?
Yeah, I think that's something we still have to spend some time designing. But I definitely think any action that requires a response or another action should definitely have alerts associated with it. I think we'll have to think a little bit about the granularity of configuring those alerts. Which ones you want to receive, being able to configure that per user if you'd like. I think there's probably a lot of functionality to think through around that. Any other thoughts, BJ? One other thing to note on this page, this is just kind of a simple mock-up of it, but you'd also have the ability to kind of take some actions around approving or progressing the applicant at this point. So maybe it's approving, requesting changes, which might unlock that stage for some amount of time for them to kind of amend their application. Probably use a friendlier word than reject there, but being able to essentially deny the application at that point. So go ahead.
Did you tell us we could rename the stages, or are they like standardized for all people?
Those will be completely renameable and configurable.
Are we gonna have any ability to communicate with them on their application? Like if we get through there, can we send them a message? And
Yeah, go ahead, DK.
Yeah, so we actually have another application portal that we've modeled this off of that we did for the Homeowner Assistance Fund. And we did have some functionality in there to communicate with the applicants. So that may be like a feature that we layer into here. So it was kind of interesting. We on the we call it ProLink Plus for that project. You could decide whether you wanted the applicant to be able to start a conversation with you, or it could just be like a one-way from you back to the applicant. So there's some configuration that we might do with that.
Probably just about at time. So I can.
You got 7 minutes.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll use 7 minutes. So that's pretty much it for the review side. that's kind of to that question about communication. That's kind of why one of the reasons why we wanted to add this overview. Yeah, go ahead.
Another question on the dates. So like, it's great if you have a round where you have a final date and all of those are gonna be like that, but sometimes we have like, funding opportunities that are just open all year and we could be taking them anytime. So are the dates set? Or can we, like have it go 15 days from the start of the application, you have to do this? I'm just curious.
Yeah, we haven't added that to the mock yet. I've heard now twice about sort of doing a relative deadline based on when maybe something was submitted. We had discussed it, but we weren't really sure if that was a use case that would actually be used. So I think we've heard from 2 people now on that. So we'll definitely take note of that about possibly supporting relative deadlines. I'll quickly just show you the application overview. So we definitely want to have some dashboarding functionality, potentially with, again, some filtering where the dashboard can update. We still definitely need to work on how this might be presented and configured. But just know that we definitely want to provide this. So the last thing to kind of show will be how these funding opportunities are configured. We'll go back to the account overview. This will be within your manage account page. There's probably fewer people that would actually be doing this from day to day. On this funding opportunities page here, you can see all the funding opportunities that you created. They could have different statuses. They could be a draft, published, they could be closed, potentially archived. They're particularly old. You could manage funding opportunities from here that you're currently working on, or you could create a new one. In this screen here, you can see we have that functionality for either creating from scratch or using an existing opportunity. This is where you might be able to select the previous year and kind of use that as a template for your new one. We'll go into this screen here. You'll be able to configure, again, what I kind of showed you on those other pages, the description of the funding opportunity, the URL that learn more link might take you to, potentially some stuff like funding sources, whether or not it's a competitive or non-competitive funding opportunity, maybe the funding year.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that URL link, that could possibly be a link to your state's UAP.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd have to think about whether or not we could support like a direct download from that link, or if it would have to take you to a web page where they would then download it.
Okay.
But yeah, you could configure where that link goes.
Okay.
Yeah. Definitely.
If this is interfacing with HFA, would we have to somehow tell you what cycle or where it's going when it gets over there? Is that kind of, we have to make the 2 match?
Probably, I think.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do a 2026 9%.
Right.
I want it to end up in the 2026.
For that cycle. Yeah.
Somehow in my admin function, I have to say where it goes.
Right. I'm not sure if we do that like in the setup of the funding opportunity or when you say push all these deals and then you select it at that point in time. We'll have to figure out which makes most sense.
My only concern would be if we do it wrong. It's too late, right?
Right.
So you had this problem before where they were, not you guys, but we API to the wrong cycle. And then we had to actually either have you guys run a script or manually delete them. So when that push thing, we need to have something that validates that it exists on the other side, obviously, and that it hasn't already happened. They'll do it twice.
Yeah. I guess we could look and see if would you ever push multiple times
Yes,
though? So I don't know, we have to think about.
Because you can only have 4% and we have more than one cycle.
Yeah.
So those are something to consider when you connect them to.
Just a couple other things, being able to set an open and close date. So that would be when applicant could actually initiate an application for this funding opportunity and would drive that apply now button in the marketplace. We definitely want to be able to support rolling applications or maybe funding opportunities that don't have a particular deadline, or you would just want to manually close it at some time. So we have a checkbox here for that, but that's definitely something we want to support. Going into the stages, this is where you configure the individual stages for the funding opportunity. You can do one or as many as you like, essentially, within reason. It set the name, it set the description of the stage here, the stage submission message, which we talked about. Sort of the important thing here is kind of configuring how that stage is unlocked. So for this particular one, it's the very first stage in the application. So we just want to say it gets created right away. And this, these two fields here, you could set the deadline for submission for this stage. And then additionally, you can kind of turn on individual stage sections here. So you could say, I want to collect project details here. I want to collect the project team. This is where you could configure which project team members need to be filled out. So maybe you want to say, I got, and they're also kind of organized within categories. So you want to say, I want to require a developer who can only enter one, but then I also want to have a co-developer. That could be optional, and I want to allow multiple. So they could add as many co-developers as they'd like. Additionally, there would be some support for creating custom roles. So let's say I want to add someone in the architecture category. We're going to say add new, create a new role. If I can click it without, there we go. And then it's kind of already pre-filled out here, but you could enter in the name of this new role in that field. And then that role would be available across all funding opportunities to use. And then finally, supporting documents. Again, this is where you can add required or optional documents to upload. We have talked about this, it's not on here, but potentially adding validation around the file type as an option. But being able to set the description and document name here.
Is that where you'd also put the template?
Yeah, and you would also add, I don't know if we have it in this mock yet, but yeah, this is where you would upload the template as well.
I got a question. Are there any plans to add more robust reporting? In here, I've seen a lot of screens where export to the CSV or whatever. But that's just moment in time exports. We aren't adding any reporting dashboards.
Well, we had that overview dashboard. I guess what sort of reporting would be like most useful to you?
For example, we run into some curious challenges around tracking list. And you know, it's getting pulled from different data sets, different databases, different tables. And for whatever reason, it doesn't like the format well. So I was wondering if we could get that kind of baked into here, which is closer to the source of the data, rather than after it's been moved into multiple tables.
Yeah, kind of playing telephone with data.
Yeah.
Would that be something where you would want to be able to configure the format yourself, or is it just?
Well, yeah, we'd like something where there's a degree of configurability, but so long as core data is available. And there's a number of different opportunities like that.
Right.
It could be through that word.
I think that's probably something when we do our next round of client calls, we want to discuss with you probably a little more in depth to learn about your use case. I think.
Do everything.
Yeah, I think we would, you know, we definitely want to support whatever's useful and adds value. So if that's something that we feel like, you know, adds value, it could be in our plan potentially, but I think we definitely have to learn more about it. Let's see, I think we're at time. So this, I almost did the whole thing. The last thing that you would be able to configure, it would be the work centers. So this is where you could set up automation around work centers being created and like gets access to those work centers and being able to choose a work center template for those. Any other additional comments or questions?
Smart Doc. So obviously our application is a Smart Doc. Do we have, is it gonna have any kind of send function, or am I gonna have to download it, open it, send it?
Good question. Probably that will be the case.